assistance. That is up to $1,200 per individual, $2,400 per couple, $500 per child. There is a phase out at the higher income levels, but it's estimated that 90% of Americans will receive some form of assistance. Phase 3 also included the Paycheck Protection Program. This is being rolled out through local lenders. I was on a conference call yesterday morning with our bankers and our credit unions to just help provide the information that they need and answer questions so that this can be rolled out as quickly and as quickly as possible, and in a way that's going to really provide that fast relief. And they are ready to step up. Congress included $350 billion in guaranteed loans to businesses under 500 employees and some franchises. I encourage you to reach out to your lender, reach out to SBA to make sure that you are getting signed up. It provides more cash flow to businesses and incentives to keep employees on payroll. The loans through the Paycheck Protection Program are 100% federally guaranteed loans that will be forgiven for employers who maintain their payroll during this emergency. While the SBA is the lead on distributing these loans, the program is designated to go through your local lenders so the administration can send these funds out as quickly as possible. There's also the economic injury disaster loans, and you access those loans by applying at sba.gov/disaster. And I know you'll hear more about that in just a moment, but this is $10,000 advance available within 3 to 5 days. There's the employee retention tax credit. The CARES Act created a new employee retention tax credit for employers who are closely trying to keep their employees online, whether they're employed, whether they are partially closed or experiencing significant revenue losses, or if they've had to close. This employee retention tax credit is really an incentive to keep these employees on the payroll, but don't want to take, for those employers that don't want to take out a loan. And then it also included a big expansion of unemployment insurance. It's extended, there's an extension, an additional $600 per week for 4 months. UI is also extended to the self-employed and the gig workers. You're already starting to hear some conversations about a phase 4. I've been on some conference calls with my colleagues as well as folks from the administration. Right now, I think the focus should be on phase 3 and making sure that we get this rolled out as quickly and efficiently as possible. If a phase 4 really starts moving, I would welcome your thoughts. I wanted to just give Ty Barbary a shout out for the Barbary Clause. He contacted me, I don't know, last week maybe, or the week before when we were working on phase 3. And he said, we need to do something to protect the retirement funds, no penalties. And we got some of those provisions in phase 3. So it makes a difference when you let me know what your ideas are and what you believe needs to be included, both from a public health perspective and from an economic perspective. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lance. Good to be with you, and just know that we are here to help, to answer questions, to connect you however we can, and really just want to make sure that we get our Main Street up and running as quickly as possible and get you the fast relief that you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative McMorris Rodgers. We do have a few questions that we're going to run through that had come in during the emails last night. And so starting with Rob Allen from Rangemaster Shoulder Therapy asked, can Medicare telehealth benefits be extended to elderly PT and OT patients during a time when we are asking elderly to be stay home? PT and OT services reduce the need for prescription drugs like opioids and bone and joint, or for bone and joint injuries, but don't appear to be included in the extended Medicare telehealth benefits expanded package.
Very good question. I support extending the telehealth benefits to occupational therapy, to physical therapy, Unfortunately, it wasn't included in the package as it passed Congress. That's one of those issues I think would really make sense to include moving forward. The good news in phase 3 was that there was major support for telehealth, which is so important as you think about people in Eastern Washington who live in rural areas, people being isolated, encouraged to stay at home. There was a big commitment made to telehealth, and I hear what he's saying about needing to expand it. It's certainly going to be my goal that we do that. I should also mention that there was a big commitment made to ensuring that people can connect, get more support for rural broadband, broadband for rural and underserved areas, because as we are more relying on the internet and on our connection for economic activities, for education, for healthcare, having that connection is pretty foundational.
Okay, and then we had another question. Mariah McKay was Simba, and their organization serves small business owners who are struggling with coronavirus health issues, for which care is being delayed at this time. Do you support reopening the healthcare exchange enrollment to expand healthcare coverage at this time?
Yeah, I would have to look into that. I didn't realize that well, I guess it's because it's March, right? So the issue is that the exchange, that opening comes in the fall. And that's a really good question, that this is a time when we need to offer opportunities for people that are losing their jobs, losing their businesses, to be able to access health insurance. I appreciate you raising that issue. I will look into that, and I haven't figured, I don't know right off the top of my head what all that would entail, but thank you for raising the issue, and I will look into that further.
And then one more, Mariah Sichi from Adult Family Home Council, surrounding the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act, that requirement for businesses with 500 and less employers. We are concerned that this will affect their 3,172 adult family homes here in the state of Washington, who are small business service Medicaid clients. This will be a huge hit if they have to pay on top of that what they're already paying, the state requires.
What was put in the bill to cover an individual that, what was put in the bill for Family Medical Leave Act provisions, the 14 days for individuals that have either are battling coronavirus, or have a family member, or have children that are home and have to stay home. Those provisions, those 14 days, are being paid for by the federal government. So it is a commitment that we made to financially support small business owners whose employees are being directly impacted. So we can get you some more information, but that is not an additional cost on the small business owner, because it's being paid for by the federal government.
Gotcha. Okay, and then one final question, Rick Garrett from Rain Man Rain Gutters, on the issue of tying together the fact that the state of Washington, with our shutdown for most small business here over the last couple of weeks, and then the PPP coming online, there's a gap there. And so is there work being done to tie together that gap for employers having to have laid off staff to then bring them back on? And can they bridge that gap, knowing that they'd be able to charge back those funds to the PPP?
Right. I believe the answer is yes, but I can work to get that confirmed. The goal is to keep people employed, if at all possible. And clearly, we saw the jobs numbers this morning, over 6 million this last week that have lost their jobs, and it's a tough time. So the main goal is to keep people employed. Yes.
This is Ron from the U.S. Chamber, and I'll talk about this later, but the answer is definitely yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron. Okay, we're gonna thank you again, Representative McMorris Rodgers. We're gonna, if you can stay on the line, we'll circle back to some additional questions at the end, but I want to get over to SBA because a lot of them coming through, I think we can get answered in Jeremy's talk here. And so Jeremy, if you're on the line, if you could unmute at this time, we'll turn it over to you for the update from SBA.
Great. Well, I'm just realizing my hair's not as clean as I thought it was, so I'm going to go back off video. But guys, it's really good to be with you. You know that this has been a crazy time for small businesses, and it's not an exception for the SBA. We've been working really hard to get everything we need to get done. Early on, we had a real problem with our disaster loan program. The economic injury disaster loans, that we affectionately call EIDL loans. The ODA, our Office of Disaster Administration, is incredible. Houston, Puerto Rico, when they got hit, people couldn't just get online and apply for a loan. We send those guys out, and they're on the floor. They typically got some great donated space at a city hall or some main thoroughfare, and dozens of ODA employees and SBA detailed staff go down and help people walk through disaster loans. And you can't do that in a pandemic. So everyone went online, and we just did not have the capacity. But as of Sunday this week, we do have the capacity with, thanks to a public-private relationship. If you go online and apply for our disaster loan or disaster advance grant, we can process 2,000 loans every second. That means we can get a disaster loan to any business in the United States. If everyone applied, we could have every small business get a disaster loan in 4 hours. So we have the capacity, and that website's up and running. Similarly, but now that we have the Paycheck Protection Act, which is an incredible safety net that Congress has given our small businesses and their employees, we're going to be working through our financial institutions to help small businesses get access to the funds they need. And this is a game changer. For the next 8 weeks, employers will be able to give a full paycheck, healthcare benefits. They'll be able to pay their mortgages. They'll be able to make their lease payments, and they'll be able to keep their utilities paid while we practice social distancing, stay at home, and flatten that curve that we're all watching on the news, that bell curve of people getting sick. This is a game changer to help us do that, and to help people have the money in their pockets they need to make their mortgage payments, their rent payments, and buy groceries, and just stay home and watch Tiger King. So it is a game changer, and we're really happy about it. This week, we've been waiting for our SOPs, which are standard operating procedures, to be finalized through the administrative process. By the end of the day, we expect that those SOPs will be in the Federal Register, and a lot of the questions that our small businesses and that our lending partners have been asking, we'll finally have the answer to those verifiably certified in the Federal Register. What I can tell you right now is if your financial lending institution has already have an SBA guarantee, they will be ready to begin loaning PPP loans 12:01 a.m. Eastern time. And they'll be able to submit that via our E-Tran system with the SBA, and how financial lenders use that to submit loan packages. We are confident we've given it the same treatment that the disaster loan website has gotten. It will be able to handle the load that will come in. As Representative McMorris Rodgers mentioned, there's $350 billion there. It's a first come, first served basis. And so, and those loans, the PPP loans, are maxed out at a $10 million loan. So those are going to be online. They're going to be ready to go. And for our lenders that might be in the audience, or people whose lenders are, their personal lenders are still waiting for that status of SBA guaranteed lender, we'll be working. If an institution has previously had that designation and let it lapse, they will be very much fast tracked, and their applications that have been submitted will go through. And then for those who have never had that SBA guaranteed lender status, we are working very hard to make sure that they'll be able to be certified in very short order. We have an expedited process. We anticipated that happening today, but as I said, we're still waiting for those standard operating procedures to get through to the Federal Register through that administrative process. And as soon as that happens, we'll be able to move forward with those trainings and certifications. So with that, that's our most current status update with the SBA, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. We do have quite a few questions for you, and I know, again, to reiterate what you mentioned earlier, the clarification and guidelines will be ready by the end of the week, starting early next week, and so a lot of this will become easier. Right now, we're working through new programs that have not fully come online yet, and so if you could do the best you can, we understand on answering some of these. One big one that continues to be a question that we hear consistently: will applying for both the PPP and the EIDL cause problems with one or both of the applications?
That's an excellent question, and it's honestly personally my biggest question. When these disasters happen, like I mentioned in Puerto Rico and Houston, we've had the situation in the past where it's called duplication of benefits. SBA's on the ground, they're able to quickly get out their disaster loans so people can reopen their business or, get the gap in insurance that didn't cover all the losses they incurred to their homes. And it's very efficient and done. The ODA works like a fine-tuned machine. So later, if a grant is passed by Congress, and those grant dollars go through FEMA, and FEMA is offering grants for the same losses, if you already received that disaster loan, it's called a duplication of benefits. You can't receive federal monies from two different federal agencies for the same purpose. And we have differing opinions on what will happen. I know that the agency SBA is hopeful that one will not disqualify from the other, but until those SOPs are finalized and have gone through that administrative process, we cannot answer that question. And so I know it's not the answer I want to give, but we're still waiting for those SOPs to be able to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. And then another one for nonprofits, so 501c3 and C7, they are both eligible under the PPP program. It's
actually 501c3 and C16s.
Okay, not C7, gotcha.
Yeah.
And C6 is also left out of that at this time.
Correct.
Correct. Under the 501c3 religious organizations, there's been no distinction precluding those from being eligible.
Correct. There are a couple areas that are traditionally excluded from SBA lending that we believe will be included with the PPP. And again, I can't say yes or no until we get those SOPs, but as we read the legislation, we certainly think that's a possibility. And we're very, very anxious to get our hands on those SOPs to see what the administrative process left us when everything's said and done.
Okay, and then we had Ryan Lothrop from Mojo Print Solutions ask, as W-2 employees / owners of an S Corp, they receive unemployment. How does that affect their ability to apply and receive money from an SBA loan package?
It doesn't. I don't know have all the details on that yet. Again, SOPs. But the only rule about receiving these PPP loans when you go to apply, it says if you let people off, you're receiving unemployment. They only ask that you quickly rehire your people and get them their full paycheck. So quickly is the standard. If you're on unemployment insurance right now, you were laid off and you're getting these checks, you can still be eligible as long as you can show economic injury to your business, and you just apply and then start paying everybody their full paycheck. But on the top end, the most you can give a salary is $100,000. So there is that restriction on how much a paycheck can be. But for most small businesses, that's going to be able to help most of their employees make sure they get a regular paycheck.
we had one more as to how the PPP applies to a sole proprietor with no employees.
Yeah, completely. And I believe Representative McMorris Rodgers mentioned this. Designed for the gig economy. We are fully aware that there's a lot of small businesses out there that their work is contracted. They go out, they might handle payroll for a dozen different small businesses, or they work and they put up the drywall. And for those businesses, they all qualify for PPP. If you haven't given yourself a normal salary as a small business person, you're just going to have to average out what your yearly salary would have been, based on last year, just look and see what it would have been. That's what you put in for your salary when you make that loan or apply for that loan with the bank.
Okay, and that clarifies. We had a question from Tabitha Gregory from Freeform Interiors. Can you include in commissions in an owner's salary calculation of average monthly payroll when applying for PPP?
Yep, commissions, tips. That waiter and waitress who have a very low hourly wage, but make up for it in the tips. You have to calculate into that all the revenue all the money they're losing from their paycheck. So you just have to take those averages, see what people have been making roughly, and be able to provide that for your justification as to why you're giving someone this salary. Obviously we're going to be giving people regular paychecks, and the PPP isn't going to be there to just say, well, and then they get this commission. Just figure out what a salary would be.
Okay, and then final two, just for clarification points here, we had Ben Sucker with Spokane Low Income House Consortium asking, the PPP they had heard contains a $10,000 grant in addition to the loans. That is part of the EIDL PAC program, not the PPP.
Correct. That's the Disaster Advanced EIDL Advance Loan. It is a grant. It can be applied for separately from a disaster loan. There's a little bit of confusion on that. There are two different products. If you apply for a loan, you can ask that 10,000 of that loan be advanced as a grant for a disaster loan. And or you can just say, hey, I just need the $10,000 grant, and that can be it. But like I said, what I can't tell you is if you receive those funds, whether or not that will disqualify you from the PPP program, which will be much more attractive for small businesses who payroll and keeping a lease payment and the utilities paid for. That's their biggest concern. They want the PPP. If their concern lies outside of payroll, then the disaster loan program is going to be a much better product, especially with the low interest rate. And you can, there's a 30-year amortization on those disaster loans. You can make those loans be very de minimis monthly payment by, having 30 years to pay back the loan.
Okay, and then final question, one of our lending partners, Lacey Sherman with Columbia Bank, asked if the SBA has a preliminary estimate on the demand for these, and the fact that we know the monetary commitment from the federal side right now. Is it something where they need to be encouraging business owners to apply now because of a risk of funds drying up?
So this is the situation is the PPP funds are first come, first serve fundage. And I'll let Cathy McMorris Rodgers speak to this, but what I can say is I've spoken to many congressional representatives. The CARES Act was the third wave of stimulus for this crisis. And the SBA is an advocate for small businesses. We'll be in touch with our congressional leaders. We'll be in touch with White House leadership to let them know of the demand and how quickly we might go through that $350 billion. But everyone that I have spoken to on the congressional side of things in the White House are already looking at what the next wave of stimulus might be. And we at the SBA will be in very, very close communication with those leaders to let them know the demand that we have.
Okay, perfect. We're going to give you a moment to take a drink of water.
Hey,
we're going to.
Can I jump in just really quick? This is Ron from the chamber. The PPP is capped at $350 billion. Applications aren't even going to start for the PPP until April 3rd and April 10th. Small businesses and sole proprietorships can start on April 3rd. Independent contractors and self-employed individuals can start applying on April 10th. So there's a little bit of time to get ducks in a row. Also, while it's important to apply early and quick, you have some time to run the numbers and look at these things a little bit. The money isn't going to run out in the first 3 days.
Ron, where are you getting those numbers and that information?
Those numbers from the White House. The April 10th, April 3rd and April 10th dates were released on Treasury's website yesterday afternoon.
Okay, that's information I haven't seen yet. So that very well be right. I cannot verify it. I can tell you that we've had a lot of
I get it.
Bootleg SOPs. So I can't verify it, but that very well, what I've been told is it'll be a first come, first served basis, and the loans will begin 10 a.m. or at 12:01 a.m. Eastern tonight. Well, early Friday morning.
Okay, we're going to pop over Brett Holt with FEMA. Are you on the line?
I am here.
All right, we'll turn it over to you.
You bet. And also, just so you know, I have my state counterpart, Taylor Hennessy, has also joined us from Washington Emergency Management, which will give her an opportunity to speak to some of their work, because we are tightly connected here. So my name is Brett Holt. I'm the FEMA Region 10 Private Sector Liaison in the Office of External Affairs. I oversee strategic engagement with the private sector and help coordinate disaster communication with the private sector and FEMA. So we just want to speak a little bit about some of the work we're doing in this disaster. I know we've had an opportunity yesterday to speak to the Greater Spokane Incorporated and our Washington delegation in the last couple of days. Just make sure you guys know either how to work with us or, of course, how to get information. So we get a lot of inquiries from the private sector, either just looking for general information. They might want to, they have something to offer, of course. There's a resource or a product they want to be able to provide, or they are also retooling manufacturing lines to help support the effort. So currently at the FEMA, we do have an open RFQ right now that we're taking for PPE and other medical supplies. I'll provide a link to that so everyone can see. But we have a how to help page at our FEMA.gov address, and you can go on and, depending on your type of business or service or product you're offering, you can go ahead and bring that in. You can work with me. We are doing some regional contracting. Of course, our priority is under the PPE, N95 masks, some of the high or priority needs at the moment that we can perhaps move a little faster on. But you can work with us. The key part with working with the federal government, of course, is that you are registered in our system, SAMS, and you have a DUNS number. That would be the first step. And then I can help connect you, get stuff pushed over to our contracting officer and see how we can help support the effort. But we are doing some of that. I also work with our states who have a website set up to help us take in those offers and see if they might be able to work with you. So that's one component. We are getting lots of offers throughout the agency, so it does take some time to filter and connect as appropriate. We're also working around our supply chain. Grocery, getting food on the table is a really a high need, and we are doing coordination calls. If you happen to be a grocer and you would like to be part of these weekly calls on Wednesdays, feel free to reach out to me. My information, brett.holt, it's BRETT.HOLT at FEMA.DHS.gov. One of the issues that was just brought up yesterday, I coordinate across 4 states, and in a few of our rural areas, they started seeing there's some challenges with food getting delivered to areas, or there's changes in distributors, and they're prioritizing urban areas and less on rural areas. And that was limiting their supply to get to some of their these small rural communities. And so that being brought up, we're trying to help work with some food distributors to see if they can shift efforts or make sure that the food is getting there. But that's, for example, that's some things that we work on these 1-hour calls. And then, of course, if you want to be involved from a national perspective, there are calls with FEMA through our National Business Emergency Operations Center that I'm helping to coordinate with. And those are on Mondays and Fridays. And you get a chance to also hear not just what's going on, but also bring up your questions, whether you're a large business, medium, or small business. You know, everyone will be invited for that. And you can reach out to me and we can make sure we get you connected. So there's some of the things we're working on, at least from where I sit in FEMA. I know there's a lot of things that you'll probably see in the news, and there's a lot of pieces to this particular operation. But I'd like to turn it to Taylor Hennessy, introduce herself and some of the work they're doing to help support the private sector.
Thank you, Brett. My name is Taylor Hennessy. I am the Private Sector and Critical Infrastructure Program Manager with Washington Emergency Management Division. Currently with the activation in response to COVID-19, my role has shifted to the Business and Infrastructure Branch Director, which is situated within the operations section. Our branch is focused on supporting the lifeline sectors, which includes water and wastewater, communication, transportation, energy, and also working with the private business sectors through commerce and also through working with the economic recovery team. So what we're aiming to achieve is to be an advocate for concerns that we are hearing and being able to push that information across the State Emergency Operations Center so it lands in the right place, and also for being able to push that information up to the policy room where some action can be taken to help tailor proclamations to support the needs of the private sector and with the response, and also with the supply chain integrity. So that goes back to a lot of those grocer calls and hearing what those needs are and being able to understand those specific requirements that they have in order to keep the goods flowing and to keep the critical infrastructure up and supporting all of the communities. Another area that we've been focused on is with the recent proclamation, stay home, stay healthy. A lot of businesses had questions about whether or not they are essential. There obviously is going to be a lot of gray area. So we stood up a business response team or response group, which answers those questions that are being sent in via a form on coronavirus.wa.gov. I can share that link with you all. But we do have a team that is working very hard to get back as quickly as possible to those questions. We also are working with the industry leads through commerce to continue to connect the dots. A lot of companies right now are willing to pivot their manufacturing to produce PPE, and we are very thankful and grateful that companies are doing this because the process is not as simple as saying that you want to do it. Obviously, it's rather complex, and there's a certification, and you must be registered by the FDA. But for those companies that are able to do that, very appreciative. And so working closely with the companies and the commerce sector leads to get people the information they need and to point people in the right direction. So for anyone who is interested in either donating or supporting the response by shifting or pivoting your manufacturing, I suggest that you check out coronavirus.wa.gov, which is a site that's being managed by our Joint Information Center, and it has information on ways to support, but also the essential business list and different resources that are available for the companies and for the workforce as well. Lastly, I do want to mention that, as I already had stated, we are working closely with our economic recovery team. So that was recently put together, and that team really focuses on coordinating recovery actions among state agencies to support local and tribal jurisdictions. I would then point you again to coronavirus.wa.gov business-workers to learn more on the different types of support that is available. So with that, that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. Can you share that last link that you mentioned there
Yes.
for everybody? And then Brett, we had a question / comment come in earlier from Kerri Olinger. They have a brewery that they're willing to transition into making hand sanitizer. One of the issues they've run into is the struggle on getting supplies. Are there centralized resources to help businesses who have taken those steps to pivot what they're manufacturing to then gain access to the raw goods and materials needed to make the new resource that they would be producing?
That's a great question, because that has been a little bit of a challenge. I know from where I sit to help connect with the goods and materials. Actually, I'm where you want to change, pivot, and looking for the raw goods. I actually might want to push that down and Taylor, if Commerce was actually helping out on some of that. Not that I want to deflect, and I'm going to take that question back, but I'm going to ask Taylor a bit on some of that connection, because her and I have talked about this, and I think the state's been able to do some work around it.
Yes, so there's an email address. It's let me pull it up real quick, and I'll put it in the chat. But it's manufacturing@commerce.wa.gov. And the purpose of this inbox, this email address, is to gather those types of questions and to help support and connect the dots. So for companies that are wanting to do this, they can then be pointed in the right direction. So I know particularly for distilleries that are shifting their manufacturing to hand sanitizer, there's a group that's leading this and a point person. So if you just give me your information, I can put you in touch with that person. There's my email address as well in the chat.
Okay, perfect. For time reasons, we're going to move on in our program here and welcome Ron to the call with an update from the U.S. Chamber. I know they have produced some fantastic resources that all of our local chambers have been using to share out on these various programs. And so, Ron, I know maybe you can provide an update from DC on what we're seeing there and go from there.
Sure, happy to, and great to be here. I also really appreciate the folks also on the call, and really on behalf of the American business community, we really appreciate everything you're doing to keep business in business. If you look at this bill, Congress recognized that it's really important to keep the economy going. That's why they dumped $2 trillion to keep American businesses liquid. I'm going to start here with one of the questions I can't answer. Should I take an EIDL or should I take a PPP? That's something that I can't answer, but the best advice that I can give you is run the numbers both ways. Run the numbers based on your business, the things that you're looking at, and hopefully some of the things that I'm talking about will provide you some guidance in that area. On the PPP, right now you can go. You should be able to end up going into any bank to deal with the PPP. Right now, any banks that deal with 7A loans, and I think that there's 12 or 1,400 banks, right now they're already certified. Treasury is working to make sure that FDIC banks, credit unions, farm credit system, those financial institutions are also going to be eligible to deal with the PPP. Having a discussion with your banker on what makes sense for you is one of the smart ways to go. In terms of eligibility, I can go into this a little bit. Small businesses with fewer than 500 people, 501c3s with less than 500 people, C19 veterans organizations, tribal businesses. There are a lot of different organizations that are eligible. Some in the food service area are eligible per location. So food service, hospitality, if you have a couple of hundred workers at different sites, you can count each site individually. So there are some different standards there. The PPP application is 4 pages long. 2 pages are boilerplate that, Paperwork Reduction Act, Privacy Act, all the unimportant stuff. There's really only 2 pages of questions and certification. Really, really easy stuff. Asking if you ever gone to jail or been debarred. Ask if you have other loans outstanding. The information there is, sorry about that. Can you still hear me? Another call came in.
You're good.
We're good? Yeah. Okay, excellent. So the applications are really, really straightforward. What we're hearing from Treasury is that you should be able to drop this application off in the morning and get a check later in the day. That's their expectation of what they want the financial service organizations, with the banks, the credit unions, to be able to do. How much can you borrow? Basically, the loan is based on 2.5 times, the maximum loan that you can get is based on 2.5 times the total monthly payroll costs that you have. If your business wasn't, and there's different time periods that you could. Goal here, Congress's part, was to try and get you as big a number as you can. If you were going gangbusters early in this year, if you weren't operating last year, you get to use early 2020 numbers. If you were going gangbusters last year, you use those numbers. There are some exclusions. Compensation you can only count compensation up to $100,000. So if you're paying someone $120,000 a year, you only get relief on that the first $100,000. And if you keep people on the payroll through June 30th, this loan will be forgiven. If you do what you say you're going to do when you take this loan, the loan by and large is going to go away and turn into a grant. So that's really, really good news. Really important to keep the economy going. The EIDL loan is a little bit different. The maximum EIDL loan is $2 million. You can get up to $200,000, so 10% of that, without a personal guarantee. And as we were talking about earlier, an immediate $10,000 grant. But whether you go the EIDL route, the PPP route, there's been some questions on whether you can use both if you're not using them for the same costs. That's something that we need further information on. But I think the best guidance that we can give you is to talk to your banker and describe your individual needs, what you want to get done, and how all of these things are going to work together. I think Congress and the federal government, SBA, Treasury, everyone else deserve an awful lot of credit in the past 2.5 weeks, have stood up these programs, got them running. It's a 900-page bill. People don't have all the answers yet, but the degree to which everyone is working together to try and get those answers together and get the money out the door as quickly as possible has really been something remarkable to see. But maybe I can open it up to some questions there.
Perfect. Thanks, Ron. We do have a few questions here at the end, and I did want to just draw everyone's attention to these resources are on our joint website now. U.S. Chamber has produced a really fantastic set of guides. We've just updated those in the last couple hours to have the new latest versions that were put out yesterday. With the additional information on the programming here. And so again, we'll circulate links to that in a follow-up to this call, so you have the direct page to access those guides. But they really are helpful in helping you understand if you're eligible, and then how you access the various different programs. I know we had a couple questions come in here that I do want to touch on, and we'll probably, because we're short on time here, we'll open these up. And then a reminder, if you've submitted a question via chat and we do not get to, we will circle back with you directly. You can also email us at the Valley Chamber's email address at info@SpokaneValleyChamber.org. We'll have Colin put that in the chat here again for you there. Our goal is to get everybody direct follow-up on their questions so that no one's left out there with something wondering. And so again, due to time, we will cut short here, but I just wanted to make sure you have that information, and we'll do our best to follow up in a very quick, timely manner. One question here, and I believe this will be for SBA, is for the debt relief. So will SBA automatically pay monthly interest and principal payments due on existing 7A SBA loans?
So the answer to that is we are going to be deferring. Oh man.
Jeremy, would you like me to take it?
Yeah. And before I thought about that, I was in my head, I was thinking more about, I wanted to confirm what Ron shared. That is on the information he shared about when certain types of small businesses can apply. That is on the Treasury's guide for borrowers. So thanks, Ron, for providing that information. I don't know why when you said it, it didn't click in my brain, but thank you for offering that guidance. And go ahead, Kerri.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Well, we're obviously trying to help get capital in the hands of small businesses, but for those borrowers who have already have a relationship with an SBA product, we're actually going to cover those payments for them. So if they are an existing disaster loan borrower, so they have a disaster loan on the books, whether it's a homeowner or a business, we're going to pay that loan for the next 6 months. I apologize, something popped up in my window. If they're an existing I'm so sorry, I misspoke there. So for the homes and business owners, their loan is actually deferred until through December. If they are a 7A borrower with an existing relationship, any payment that's due after March 27th, which is just a couple days ago, through September 27th will be covered by SBA. So we're actually going to pay that payment. For new borrowers, we're also going to pay their payment for, I believe, 6 months. So we really want to make sure that we reduce the capital outflows of these businesses to get them through this recovery period.
Thank you, Kerri. Jeremy and Kerri, we had one other question in regards to, since the banks, the SOP doesn't exist yet, the banks are telling a lot of clients calling in and asking to apply now that they can't run through the application process. Is it best to submit online currently and then establish that local lender relationship?
Well, with the PPP, you're going to apply through your lending institution. So you need to be in touch with your local banker, and they will submit online via our eTrans tool, like they have typically for our 7A products. So no matter what, for disaster loans, it goes through us and our website, but for the PPP, that's going through your lender. And again, like I said, every existing 7A SBA guaranteed lender, they're going to be ready to go, especially, those ones very savvy with our eTrans system. We are also going to be quickly reapproving lending institutions that have let their guaranteed status lapse, and obviously training up people as fast as we can, lenders that are not currently guaranteed lenders. Again, we had expected those SOPs to come at least Wednesday morning. The process has taken a little bit longer. But let me tell you, and Kerri, just to steal a phrase from Kerri, the federal government's been working at lightning speed for something of this size. And so, we all like to joke about how quick things go through, in a federal process. I mean, our framers made legislation hard to pass. We designed a slow running machine with our federal government and bureaucracies, but we've been working very quickly, and we anticipate getting those SOPs out to everyone just as soon as we can.
And I think the guidance only got to the banks, yesterday evening or this morning. So they've only had a very, very short time to digest how they're going to deal with all this stuff. And the program's going to be up and running tomorrow. Yeah,
and there was a meeting like you said, later in the evening yesterday with some of the major lending financial institutions and the SBA and Treasury. The situation's been fluid for 3 weeks now, and obviously just a week with PPP, but I've just been impressed with the creativity and the hard work from our people to think of just new ways to handle very difficult problems. You know, institutions that have never been asked to do certain things have been asked to do things, and we've gotten capacity up and our efficiencies up in very short order, thanks to some incredible public-private partnerships.
And then a really great final question here, Troy from VIP Production Northwest. Can you cancel an EIDL application which was applied for just recently so you don't jeopardize your PPP application?
Kerri, what's the answer to that?
If you're offered a EIDL loan from SBA, you do not have to take it. We've actually encouraged businesses to apply because we wanted them to get in the queue, but they don't have to take it.
How does it work with the $10,000 advance? Is that something that will be direct deposited into their accounts, or do they have to accept it? That's been something I've been trying to track.
So they don't have to take the $10,000 advance. That's an option you check. And when you check that, then it will ask you for your treasury account, or your, not the treasury account, the routing number and your bank account. What is unclear at this point that we're just really hopeful in getting the SOP is if you take that 10,000 and you later want to switch to the PPP, can that 10,000 be paid back or a credit applied to the PPP loan? So more to follow on that. And to get those kind of updates, if you'll subscribe to our SBA updates at sba.gov/updates, that will make sure that you get the latest information that we're pushing out to the public.
I can tell you in the discussion on the SOPs, that was certainly the intent, that we wanted people to be able to not be disqualified from the PPP with disaster loans. But if the SOPs say differently, Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers will be probably talking with you to try to get something resolved. But yeah, until we get those SOPs, we just can't answer the question.
So to clarify that, right now as it sits, if you've applied for an EIDL but didn't check the box for the 10,000, it shouldn't preclude you from your application on the PPP. If you did check the box for the 10,000, we currently don't know how that will affect the application for PPP.
Yeah, and I've been told that those automatic payments could occur as short as 3 days after you've checked the box with our new system. And yeah, we'll just see. It's not a guarantee, but we're extremely aware of the situation and monitoring it.
And this is Ron, just to make things even more complicated. You can't use an EIDL and the PPP for the same purpose, but there is the possibility that you can use them for different purposes. So you use the PPP for payroll, but perhaps you have the EIDL for mortgage or something else like that, even though those costs are eligible under the EIDL, under the PPP. So it gets really complicated with all of this stuff. Plus, EIDL is an existing program that was ramped up on steroids to address coronavirus. So there's a lot of learning that needs to go on here. And that's why I think we've said so often to speak with your banker, run the numbers different ways, see what's going to be best for your business, because there's a couple of different ways to end up getting creative for everything.
Thanks.
And then Jeremy, can you touch on just what SBA has done to improve capacity? I know that was one of the big concerns as where you used to be with the volume coming in and where you have to be now. 50 to 60 submissions per day used to seem like a really daunting number, and we could see that on an hourly basis as all the institutions ramp up online. What has SBA done as an agency to handle that added capacity need?
You know, yesterday we were instructed not to tell you about the public-private relationships that we have entered into, but we may in the future. What I can tell you is the same way that we have ramped up our disaster portal, where we can handle 2,000 loans a second. we're very confident in our ability to move these funds around now and get your applications in. And that is because of the public-private relationships that we formed. If I told you the partners, you would know them, you would feel confidence because of their brand and their reputations. So we've, while we still don't have a lot of questions with SOPs, we don't feel that we have any, we're confident in our ability to get the funds to the right people when they've been applied for.
Okay, and then one final technical question.
And on top of that, one other thing, also remember that Cathy and her colleagues were really smart in Congress where they deployed the private sector to do this. You're going to go to your own bank to fill out the application, get the consultation, deal with those things, and the bank is going to take it into SBA system where they can turn around the 2,000 applications a second. So many hands make light work in this scenario.
Yeah, and I'd be using the jargon. I've mentioned E-Tran. It's a system that we use with banks to work the 7A program. It has been beefed up. We are ready for the application process, and we know it's going to be hot and heavy for our banks. Certainly, we would just tell them, like, thank you. Kerri can tell you and probably just nod about how busy her office has been receiving phone calls. And we're going to be sending a lot of that towards our financial institutions. And honestly, local bankers are just going to be giant heroes for our small businesses as they work hard to get the funds to people who need them.
Okay, and then final technical question on the EIDL 10,000 advance. Is that forgivable? It's forgivable if used for payroll, et cetera, but is there a requirement to maintain your employees through June 30th, like the PPP?
It's a requirement that you maintain them for the 8 weeks of funding that you receive. Am I correct in saying that, Kerri?
That's the PPP.
Right.
But the EIDL, so you can even get the grant to help out your business, even if you don't qualify for an EIDL loan.
That 8 weeks of funding is going to be enough for the United States government to be collecting data, right? We're learning that by the end of April, we think that the peak of our outbreak will occur. And then by the end of April, you'll still have another month of PPP funds to pay your employees. So that gives us that breathing period to see, have we flattened the curve? We've gone through the month of April, we were able to pay all our people, and now we still have another month of funding to get through May. And what is that going to do to flatten the curve? Are we going to be ready to open up the economy? And that's the data that our leadership will be looking at. But that's why the PPP program is so powerful. It will allow people to stay home, still pay their bills, and it's going to allow our healthcare and federal, local, state officials to look at data and say, okay, we've done what we needed to do to curve this. Where do we go from here?
Okay. Well, thank you all. I want to thank again all of our speakers, Jeremy, Kerri from SBA, Ron from US Chamber, Taylor and Brett, both from FEMA and the state level disaster relief. And then again, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, thank you all for all your time, guidance, and certainly this is a challenging time. As always, data continues to change on a daily for us. I will point to our regional effort to consolidate those resources and get that all on one URL for you. We maintain hourly updates to this seemingly right now. And then again, should you have questions that were not answered, we are here to help as the 3 area chambers here. Happy to track down answers for you and get you a direct answer back. Our inbox info@SpokaneValleyChamber.org. We'll take on the sorting of those and getting those lined up to the correct resources, getting you connected and getting you guys the answers. I want to thank, I know I saw Toby Brummeling from West Plains Chamber, and I believe Alicia joined us late from GSI along with some of their staff who have joined us on the call here. It is a very a consistent joint effort here. Again, we are as a group working on an app for Spokane County businesses to utilize to help you funnel down to which resources directly apply to your business. We are rushing that through production right now with the support of Avista, and we should have a working version of that here sometime, hopefully by the end of next week. It'll be both a web-based version as well as a app-based version for those in the gig economy who work a lot solely from their phones. So that resource is in development. As soon as we have more information on the local lenders side of things here, we will also be pushing that out. I know Jeremy has a list of local lending partners that are already qualified and will be online starting tomorrow here for the PPP program. So we'll share that in a follow-up resources link email to everybody who was registered. So again, thank you very much for your time, for your participation. We continue to work on your behalf as the business community here and try and bring you qualified resources. We will have next week for our call, we're going to have the same time frame. So Thursday at 11, we're working to have Washington State Department of Commerce on that call, along with ESD, so the Employment Security Department, to help talk through some of those more technical questions when it comes down to our furlough, layoff, and various unemployment programs. Again, goal obviously being the PPP program is designed in part to keep people off of unemployment. So if we can have our employers utilizing that system, we really encourage you to look at those opportunities. We will share the U.S. Chamber's documents for both nonprofit as well as for-profit small business for the guides, the quick start guides for the PPP program. Those are a fantastic resource that helps you check the boxes as you go through that process to then fill out your application. So again, questions, feel free to submit them, info@SpokaneValleyChamber.org. If you've submitted a question via the chat, trust that we will follow up with you through that source there. And if you don't hear from us in a few days, certainly reach out to us via email to double check that we have. As long as your name and your Zoom account matches what you registered with, we have your email and we will be in touch with you. So thank you again. Everybody stay healthy and stay well, and we'll look to get through this together.